So do you think that this is an emerging aspect of human consciousness, or...
Greetings to the nearly 24.5 thousand Grimdark enjoyers of my channel, and a friendly hello to the nearly 64% who haven't subscribed. This time we're looking to a very classy Eldar craft world. A craft world famed for their disciplined defenders and their far-seeing expertise. It's a thematic list build for Craftworld Ulthwé. Alright guys, I'm trying something new with the format here, so let me know what you think. With the 10th edition Eldar Codex now out, we have a slew of detachment options. But of the options in the Codex, for a craft world as prodigious as Ulthwé, for me the answer is undoubtedly the Seer Council detachment. So let's start with a deep dive of the toolkit. The Seer Council's detachment rule is where we find the Eldar's old army rule, Strands of Fate, which has now been redesigned. And I'll be honest here, I actually kind of love this new direction. I said it back in my Fate Dice critique video, but the gist of it is, dice swapping at opportune moments is not only a game-breaking mechanic which leads to feel-bad moments, but it's also a poor choice as a mechanic aiming to abstract the theme of reading the future. The new system works similar to the previous, where at the battle start you roll a number of dice. But now, each die result instead reduces one of your 6 detachment stratagems cost by 1. This is plainly a better mechanical abstraction for Fate reading, as each die result now represents a vision described by its relevant stratagem, the set of which we'll get to shortly, which you can pursue, avoid, or seek to change. It's honestly a banger. Channel fans will know I often poo-poo GW's rules writing and rules management, maybe even quite often. But this deserves some credit.
Please clap.
Well, with the detachment rule defined, we now have the context we need. So on to enhancements, all of which can only be given to psykers. The first is the Lucid Eye, granting us manipulation over the Fate Dice pool, which, given that this is what our detachment is all about, makes it worthwhile. I would term this as a mechanical pillar of the detachment, as it lets us further play with the system it offers. Next we have Runes of Warding, which gives models in the bearer's unit a 4-up feel no pain against mortal wounds, psychic attacks, and critical devastating wounds. Look, I like that I'm finally seeing devastating wounds included in these types of defensive mechanics. And while psychic attacks are niche, most players will seek to optimize devastating and mortal wounds where they can. There is, however, a but. Most units that attach to Craftworld psykers are going to have soft Eldar bodies. It isn't really Eldar's way to field hard-to-shift anvil-type units, with multiple wounds, good armor save, high toughness, and an invuln save. Like Custodian Guard, for example. Yes, wraiths are a thing, but they cannot be led by leaders. Next we got the Stone of Eldritch Fury, which adds 12 inches to the range characteristic of the bearer's psychic attacks, which is neat. More range means easier target acquisition after all. And the last enhancement is the Torque of Morai Heg, which allows you to, once per turn, increase the cost of an enemy's stratagem used on a target within 12 inches, granting a potent restrictive tool at your disposal. Next on to stratagems, which remember, are each associated with your generated fate dice, and as you would expect, are all keyed off of psykers to a target within 9 inches. The only exception is the first one, Presentiment of Dread, used in either player's command phase, which simply forces an enemy unit within 18 inches to take a battle shock test at -1. This I like, as it allows you to deny enemies scoring from under their nose. Fate Inescapable is a shooting booster for an infantry unit, giving their weapons ignore cover, and allowing critical wounds to rend with more AP, which serves nicely as our Discipline of the Black Guardians stratagem. Forewarned gives this detachment a potent defensive booster, by Eldar standards, giving an infantry unit a -1 to hit and wound versus incoming enemy attacks. And Unshrouded Truth is just top shelf stuff, used in your movement phase allowing an infantry unit to teleport anywhere on the battlefield, setting up 9 inches outside of enemy models, giving you incredibly powerful flexibility. And our 2 reactive stratagems are Isha's Fury, providing means to deal mortal wounds should an enemy unit stray too close to a psyker in their movement phase, and Psychic Shield, which denies an enemy unit from being able to shoot at your unit unless they are within 18 inches. Again, providing a potent bit of restrictive control to your enemy's tactical options. As I said earlier, I really like what's here. It leans hard into serving a theme, one I think we can make a rather fun thematic list around. And with that in mind, the thematic objectives of the list are Flex Psykers, because of course our Seer Council of Ulthwé will obviously require Seers and Warlocks, and Flex Guardians. As you saw, many of the stratagems focus on using infantry units, which means in order to flex our fate reading, we'll need infantry. And while aspect warriors are so hot right now, an Ulthwé army focused on reading fate and tuning up guardians, which have always been a cut above, is just peak theme. And with that all said, let's head over to the list breakdown. For the most part, the list is structured in using groups of units coordinating together. Our first group at its core is a unit of Guardian Defenders, whose role is to protect our home objective. And that unit is led by a Warlock equipped with the Lucid Eye, and attached to this squad is a Shadow Weaver platform. The Shadow Weaver is a long-range indirect weapon which can essentially curse a target it hits, which can cause it to suffer mortal wounds if it moves. It works better if you shoot at large units, so the more models the better. This makes it an ideal choice as a platform for home field camping. The Warlock is here for the Lucid Eye enhancement. That's the one which lets us manipulate our fate dice. Naturally, we want to keep this guy out of danger since it's through him we get more play with our detachment system, and so he's here with our home defense team. The other reason I like the Warlock here is because of his ability, which forces enemy units charging his unit to subtract 2 from the roll, which makes any charges out of Deep Strike very unlikely. And it sort of pairs well with the Guardian's ability to freely use the Fade Back Battle Focus move, as if they get shot from Deep Strike, it may also move them even further away. Next we have 2 identical groupings, comprised of a Farseer, which is leading a unit of Guardian Defenders with an attached D-Cannon platform. The Guardians bring 20 catapult shots with a Bright Lance for some anti-armor utility. One shot at strength 12, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage is actually quite good relative to the Imperial Standard Last Cannon, but it's humbled by the D-Cannon, which brings D3 attacks at strength 16, AP 4, dealing D6 plus 2 damage with devastating wounds. And its ability allows it to reroll damage rolls of 1, or reroll full damage rolls if targeting a Titanic unit. It has indirect fire as well, but in most cases I would just fire it directly. It's primo anti-tank potency for a premium price. But hey, remember, we're trying to make the most potent Guardian squads we can. The Farseer in the unit is what ties it all together. Their ability Guide curses enemy units so that your army gains +1 to hit against them, and Branching Fates lets you once per phase change a hit, wound, or damage roll to a 6 for a model in his unit. Just so we're clear, that's after it's rolled. Following that we have our utility team. It's a unit of Storm Guardians led by a Warlock with the CP increasing Torque enhancement, and serving as their transport is a Wave Serpent with twin-linked Bright Lances. The utility primarily comes from the Torque enhancement, which can be staged in the midfield using their Wave Serpent. The Storm Guardians also bring a couple of Flamers and Fusion Guns, and on top of that they bring a decent layer of defense by Eldar standards. 10 bodies with a 5-up invulnerable save thanks to their Serpent Shield platform, which makes that Torque a bit more annoying to remove. It's certainly a finesse piece, and placement with them will be key. As a rule of thumb, if the enemy can't destroy them in their shooting phase and requires to use their fight phase to do it, if this unit were shot, I would always battle focus Fade Back them, since that would further bolster the Warlock's charge debuff. And before moving on, I also think there is high value being able to teleport the unit with Unshrouded Truth should an objective you want to sticky present itself. After that we have our Rapid Response team. Another Warlock leading a Warlock Conclave, ready to arrive where needed using a Falcon. It's essentially a drop pod Devastator squad style of play. Deep Strike in the Falcon and disembark. Shoot the Falcon at the target, keying off its fire support ability, and then have your 5 Warlocks Destructors shred. With the Leader Warlock, it gives the unit 5d6 plus 10 auto-hitting attacks, at strength 7, rerolling wounds because of the fire support from the Falcon, at AP 1 dealing 1 damage. And finally, we have our last Farseer unit, which of course features the big man himself, Eldrad Ulthran, as the warlord of our Ulthwé list. As with any figure of such reputation, he deserves a command squad of some kind, and I can't think of one more apt than a second Warlock Conclave unit. Eldrad's first value of note is the guaranteed bonus CP he gives you in your command phase, and since this detachment stratagems are tied into our fate reading theme, it's just a great thematic fit for the best Farseer in the business. So start Eldrad on the board, gain your CP, and when an opportunity presents itself, send Eldrad out to do work. Offensively, Eldrad doesn't bring a flamer to his unit of warlocks, instead he brings a psychic scalpel. Mind War is his ranged psychic weapon, a precision anti-character 4+ attack that can one-tap an enemy character. And with his other ability Doom, he can curse an enemy unit so your army has +1 to wound against that unit, which is great, especially handy for himself and the 4 Destructor Flamers in his unit. And that's the bulk of it. Only our support pieces remain, which starts with 2 Hemlock Wraithfighters. Flyers are always going to draw the attention of your opponent, but the Hemlock's heavy D-scythes are potent and fairly versatile. D6 attacks with Blast, at strength 12 AP 4 dealing 2 damage. It's a great anti-marine profile which is adequate enough to go into vehicles and monsters as well, and each Hemlock has 2 of them. Also, Hemlock Wraithfighters are psykers, so they have good interplay for our various stratagems. And the last unit is a humble squad of 5 Rangers, as it's always handy to have some forward deploying operatives. And at 2,000 points, that's the list. Wait, it's not 2,000 points. And at 1990 points, that's the list. It's got 152 wounds across 70 models. And as you would expect, given the high number of psykers and infantry, majority of those wounds are at toughness 3. Which certainly gives the list a weakness, but I like lists with some weaknesses. It makes things more interesting and more tasteful in my opinion. Altogether, I can't help but adore the theme here. Ulthwé Psykers working in tandem with the Black Guardians to maximize their potency, which poises the list to really flex the superiority of Ulthwé's Black Guardians, all the while divining the strands of fate to outmaneuver and gain the upper hand. And it even includes a unit of Rangers, which I think makes sense for an army which wants to see far.
Legolas, what do your elf eyes see?
Well, that's a wrap on this one. If you enjoyed this video, there are buttons for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to Julius Maximus, as well as my other generous patrons and channel members. Channel members and patrons get early access to videos, as well as free access to these STL doodads. Just a little something for those who help keep the dream alive. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next one.